Hello, world, and welcome to Creating Light with Kelsey. I have another guest today, Alexa Rising. And Alexa Rising is a spirited woman who has stepped into a chapter of educating herself and community about ways to heal and find safety through movement, dance, and mindfulness. Recently certified as a Dharma life and soul purpose coach and somatic activated healing teacher, she is learning to navigate the present through the lens of changing the course of her life by stepping away from her career as a teacher and working to shift her life mindset through pursuing a more aware lifestyle. During the past few years, she has worked closely with those that are experiencing the grief of a death of a loved one. She herself is walking alongside her mother, who is presently experiencing cancer and processing how that has impacted their relationship as mother and daughter. Alexa is wanting to spread the understanding of how grief is a beautifully painful part of life that is not being talked about or even demonstrated on how to process it in our lives. When major life-altering events occur to ourselves, loved ones, and collectively to all beings around the world. She also wants to advocate that hope is possible even in the midst of grief. Welcome to the show, Alexa.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelsey. It's so awesome to connect with you in this space and seeing how, as we've both become somatic activated healing teachers, really how that has called us to shift and to evolve into the teachers that we are now in whether it's working with kids, adults, fellow colleagues. It has really changed my life in the past 2 years. And I'm so grateful to be able to talk about this subject in regards to grief because it is something that I've had close to home for me, as well as from also other loved ones that are experiencing the loss of a loved one. And it has burst my heart open because it is showing my capacity to love even more. When we go through heartbreak or separation, whether in relationship or friendship or from a job that we maybe thought we'd have forever, there is grief there. And I'm understanding better how to see the shift and the grief as a way to expand. And so, thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you. And I'm excited to talk about this today.
Yeah, and that's how we met. We got certified together, the same cohort, cohort two,
Mm.
in somatic activated healing. And at the same time, we were both questioning our lives on what to do with career and life shifting in that way. And we both kind of interesting to really look at now the parallel of we both knew that we wanted to remain in a similarity of what we were doing, like me still working therapeutically and expressively with art and clients in that way, but knowing something needed to shift, and you also still wanting to be a teacher of some form and still being with working with children in the community, but it's like actually being a teacher itself in the public school system. You're like, that needs to be different.
Yes, and definitely there was grief when I chose to step away. I became a teacher because I really think from a young age, I knew that connecting with others was important for me. We're going to speak about my mom, and I was raised by a single mom. You know, uh, Even grief there, of missing that other half of myself. So as a young child, I always went and helped kiddos that maybe were struggling or maybe weren't as confident, a little more shy. And so just walking alongside those that might be struggling. And that's been a theme of my life. Not afraid to turn towards the difficult things. And, life is going to throw you curveballs. And so growing up and becoming a teacher, and I taught primary for almost a decade. And so just seeing how important it is to identify those emotions. And little kids go through a lot of big emotions. And us as adults, maybe we think, oh, I've got this, I know better than they. Yet I have been taught so much by my students and by my community of how to identify ways that are healthier than turning to distraction, turning to substance, turning to, just disassociating from ourselves. And I won't lie, for a long time in my life, I chose to distract myself rather than to actually feel what I needed to. And so when I could see that the system I was working in was doing more harm than hurt, not just to our students, but to me. And with what I was going through and finding out about the cancer diagnosis of my mom, not ironically, I had decided to walk away from teaching in a classroom a few months before that. And
Mm.
so the grief of stepping away from a career that the stability, the community, being able to have a steady income, things like that, where I knew I needed to shift. And it was scary. And, I definitely questioned and wasn't sure. Yet having more awareness in my body because of becoming a Dharma soul purpose coach, finding out where I am stronger, in my personality and things that I enjoy, and using that as a guide to then see where I want to change my life. And doing the somatic activated healing certification as someone that loves to dance, and I've danced from a young age, from Scottish Highland dance as a young kiddo to, Zumba with my mom, and, that I can see now that is how her and I really process a lot of our emotions. And just to have that example, it is a beautiful thing because I've always come back to dance, always come back to movement of some kind, whether it's working out or things like that. So to be able to incorporate the mindfulness, the breath work, the mantras that we use in the somatic activated healing, and just to see how my thoughts are changing, how I'm talking to myself and to others, and then that turns into my actions. As much as I've wanted it to be like, oh, okay, everything's fixed, not reality.
Hmm.
Yet to be present enough to feel, actually feel the interchange of my inner world and, like, the thoughts. I've held on to grief for a long time. And so to be able to hold it yet not keep it, I think
Mm.
that has been something that I'm really working on. It's let me hold myself or that person while they're in grief, yet also sharing ways to be able to allow it to move through us, as our mentor has said, I face you, I recognize you, I allow you to move over and through me. Constant reminder for me of even when the waves of grief happen, it's daily.
Hmm.
And especially as we see what the world is going through at this time, I think it's so important for us to talk about that because with somatics, the body, we have been taught to disconnect and disconnect from Mother Earth, disconnect from each other, especially after, the time before 2020.
Hmm.
Now it's like it separated us in so many ways. And so for me to be able to share with my community and getting this practice out there and just living this way now, it has opened so many doors. So, and this is one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that will like beautifully tie into the first question of what does soul liberation mean to you then?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really honestly expressing myself in my truest form. I think that for so long I felt shut down, especially my voice, whether it was society, being a woman, religion, growing up in the church, and, having that interesting way of belief system. And then, being in a relationship. Yet for me, having more of a you could say, masculine energy in those relationships, whether it was with friends or with partners, yet knowing that I was grieving the side of myself that I wasn't able to express. So now that I've been able to step into that, my goodness, my soul just feels more whole. I didn't feel whole before. I was missing parts of myself because I was giving it away to others rather than seeing the power that I had. And so the soul liberation, I'm still in it. I'm
Yeah.
learning about what that means. And so it's cool again. I say the word shift because I know that, it's a spiral rather than a line, right? About change. And it's not good or bad. It's shifting and learning and unlearning, a lot of unlearning
A lot
of
of
how
unlearning.
to. Yes, yeah, and especially, in the society we live in at this time and, what we've learned from our childhoods, it's so cool to now be, how they say you become the adult that would have taken care of you as a child. Yes,
Yeah.
I am that. I am her.
Yeah.
And my inner child is jumping for joy. She's dancing and she's celebrating, and in those moments of maybe doubt or just fear, I know that I can come back to that and just work through it. So soul liberation. I mean, what a wonderful feeling. And that's why I want to share this practice and just the change, because I think that it is possible for everyone. And we're not necessarily taught to have hope, especially during the changes that are going on in the world, nationally, even locally for me here in Alaska. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And with that, I mean, what brought you onto this path of healing, of guiding others, now being in this position? Because I'm sure it started before going into somatic activated healing, and that was just like a kicker of this other shift that you keep talking about. Um, but now, too, what are you loving about the work that you're doing?
I love the flexibility that I've created for myself. Burnout was real,
Yeah.
and that's heavy when I'm teaching, I'm taking on all the responsibilities that there are, and it really has pushed me creatively, as well as really calling me to stand strong in this stance that I'm in now and advocating for those that maybe don't have the words or getting people to resources. I still am involved with teaching, subbing, things like that. It's good for me to work still alongside teachers because I have been there and just coming in and being supportive. Can see the need. There's such a great need, especially in our educational system, and the people that are there are, for the most part, there for good intention, yet at the same time going through everything we're going through. It's like, how can I better take care of myself so that I can be a better uh, teacher, better educator, things like that. So I'm grateful for the flexibility of my choice to listen to my intuition and stepping away from the classroom, yet still being involved. And it's opened up some doors for me to see how I can still use my knowledge and expertise in the classroom, yet in a different setting. So it's a little scary, again, a little bit more uncertainty, as it's just new territory, stepping out of my comfort zone of being in my own world in my classroom and now going to different schools, seeing different ways that they're run. Awesome. So, and it's also allowed me to step into a space where I am teaching the movement healing classes in person. And as that's building, that's really teaching me how I can show up, because I kind of showed up the same way for a decade,
Yeah.
probably all my 20s. And so now that I'm in my 30s and have a better lens of how I want to live my life, that's what I'm enjoying. Is I've created the life that I've didn't know if I thought it was possible, being up here, and Alaska's pretty far removed. So I think to be able to tap in to the healing that can be done here because it's really cold a lot of the time. It is dark a lot of the time, and we're all going through that. And, the seasons and just there's a lot that can be done here. And so as often as I'm like, oh, I want to, go somewhere else, there's work to be done in my community. So just finding ways that I'm able to share now, that's what is really exciting me about this work.
And how cool is that to see the trajectory of everything, of as we tend to ourselves and our internal world, that the capacity grows of you're like, oh, I'm now overflowing and I can give to others in a way that's not depleting me, in a way that it's like it's this reciprocal thing. And not in a way of abandoning myself either. It's like truly in a way of genuine service.
Yes, and I really feel that even if I'm not posting online all the time, that's new territory for me.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about it. Like, I don't want to be clickbait, right? And so, but sharing authentically, sharing, a download I might be getting for the morning. I go on walks with my dog and, him and I have gone through some grief. And I know we'll talk about that here in a moment. And so just being able to show up as myself, that and being accepted in that way when I felt weird and just, a little more misunderstood, and just even my background a little bit. When I'm able to share and live my life in this way, even that in itself is a message and showing
Mhm.
people hope, which is awesome because for many years, I'll be honest, I was partying, I was in relationships that were not the healthiest, and to now be and being unpartnered is totally okay. I was raised by a single mama who, like she showed me, and I could cry. She has shown me what it truly means to live true to yourself and not give into the pressures of society. And to have that example, even though I fought it for a long time, I'm like, now I am her. She is me. And to stand fast in that is like nobody can take that away from me. And what a cool way to come back to myself and to truly now give from a genuine place and a healthier place, not just mentally, emotionally, physically, and I'm still a work in progress, taking it one day at a time. So to be able to show people it's okay. We've all gone through things, some huge, even some small. And at the same time, as it is easy to give into the criticism and the shame, the anxiety, the grief, there is hope on the other side. And I hope that I can be, an embodiment of that and share that with people. It's not a that all this or all that, all good or all bad. And that's why I like the word shift because, we are shifting. Oh, that worked for me then in my 20s, or we thought it worked. Yet now I can't take that with me as I'm changing. And so, it's all a part of the process. And that for me means so much. That for me has really been the inspiration behind continuing and wanting to continue to show up.
Yeah. Before we dive into more deeper of the topic of grief, like just with that again of like what started you on this path of healing and helping others.
Yeah. So really what started it, you know, I got out of a pretty abusive relationship about 7 years ago. And I was teaching, and, you know, I'm grateful to still be here. Let me say that.
Yeah.
And so with that, it put me on this path of there needs to be a change. I am, I wasn't in a safe place. I didn't feel safe even being here. And to really look at myself during that time, it was hard. And so I knew that there was more. I knew for myself. And I decided I was listening to podcasts and I found the Highest Self podcast with Sahara Rose, which then pushed me to looking at my Dharma, looking at my purpose. What am I intuitively good at doing? Just naturally, rather than forcing myself into a box, had to go to
Yeah,
school,
the
had to get
key
it.
word force there of
Yes.
like if we're forcing it, then what are we doing?
Yes, it's like, oh, I have to make this choice now because if I don't, then my life's going to be off kilter. So it was like, what am I? Okay, I've always, helped with younger kids or, things like that. So pushing me into the teaching space, which I'm so grateful for, it gave me lots of tools. And at the same time, I could really tell that I was expanding beyond what was being allowed in the classroom. As I'm going through a crazy time in my life. My students could tell that I wasn't well,
Mhm.
and that I was really struggling and my fellow coworkers. And so after that, after surviving, I'll say that, after protecting myself, and my mom too, and to be able to actually choose to learn more about myself, that pushed me into this work. And going from the Dharma coaching, I learned about Sa DeSimone, who is the head of the Somatic Activated Healing Method, and those tied together. And it was really cool because kind of one after the other, it was like, oh, I got certified as a Dharma coach, and that felt great. It like even just personally for me. And then I knew there was a little bit more of how I wanted to share. And so the dance part for me, ecstatic dances, I love to go to festivals and raves, and we're out here in Alaska going in the woods and playing music, and in the middle of nowhere, what a cool way to connect. And I've always loved that. And I've always wanted to share movement, whether it was working out or dance or things like that. So that really pushed me further into this work. And so grateful. So, so grateful.
And how things get to shift in such a relatively short time.
Yes. I mean, I feel like I've lived multiple lifetimes since 2019. And it was such a huge, like, tipping of the scale. I think to be honest, I was so disassociated with myself that I didn't care what kind of situations I put myself into. And that got me into trouble, and it got me into just dangerous situations that wow, I had to really step back and say, wow, how did we get here? And I can forgive myself for my part in that. And that's taken a lot for me,
It's such a level of
and to,
accountability.
yes, and sometimes it I kind of just look at myself, I'm like, wow, I am not that same person. And thankfully, our body rejuvenates every 7 years.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm in this really cool time of like, I'm not that same person that I was. And
Yeah.
I love her. I love her dearly, and I'm so glad that I'm still here to be able to do this work. And that motivates me every day. Even
Mhm.
on days when I need to rest, I'm like, I'm just so grateful to be here to share.
Mhm. What a process and journey. That 7 year mark, like one, that's such a big number in so many ways, but like that also brings me hope in what I tell people also of like, I will eventually have a body that has been untouched by that specific trauma that I survived. And how
Oh my
amazing is that?
goodness. Yes, and to realize that, I mean, I was kind of having the epiphany again as I was saying it, like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I am a completely, literally
Yeah.
rejuvenated version of
Physiologically.
myself. Yeah, I mean, and just to know that my past has taught me so much, and to not shame myself for it.
Mhm.
Really, like even in the moments of, oh, I should have known better and I shouldn't have loved that person. I'm not going to take that love back. I gave it from my heart genuinely. And whether it turned out how I thought, the universe has jokes and they were like, no. So, but
I need to make merch that says
we
that.
do. We need to, the
The
universe has
universe
got
got
jokes.
jokes.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Or life is lifing.
Hmm.
Life continues regardless of where we are at. And to understand that it's okay to stand still in the moments and enjoy where you're at right now, especially on this healing journey, because it's so easy to go to the next thing. Oh, I have to go get another certification. Oh, I need to go and go take another class. Or I need to go. Why do I not feel okay to sit in this, especially when I feel so much more authentic and to show up in that way as my true self? That is where I'm sitting more now and allowing. It's a huge part of it. The allowing myself, not just pushing past it. We're so used to that. I'm going to suppress it. Oh, I'll celebrate later, or I'll go celebrate on the weekend. I'm only going to give myself 2 days. No, learning to really stay present in that. And I think just teaching that presence is hard. It is a practice every day. Yet to now, I've done it with my students. It shifted the community in my classroom because I wanted to cultivate a space that was safe for them to express, and there's going to be disagreements. There's going to be problems in our daily lives, in a classroom, with family, friends, things like that. How can we articulate that? And sometimes I don't even have the words, yet my body is communicating, whether
Hmm.
it's soreness or it's telling me to slow down. Learning to listen to that has taken me time. And when I decided to step away from my classroom, I will honestly say that was one of the first times that just had this knowing. Kind of, it's hard to explain. I just knew I needed to choose something different. And having done that, it led me to, yeah, stepping away from my career, yet then being able to walk alongside my mom as she's going through her health journey right now. So just, I mean, life is a trip.
Hmm. So with that, how has grief brought more honesty and presence in your life? So you're already bringing in presence into the conversation. So has grief
Yeah.
brought more honesty and presence in your life?
Yes. So a series of events happened after I stepped away from the classroom. I have my own business of cleaning and things like that. It's kind of always been something that teachers have a side hustle, which is unfortunate that,
Yeah.
anyways, that's a whole different topic. So I was starting to do that. Summertime is great up here in Alaska. And then life, my mom was starting to feel ill. And she advocated for herself because the health system booted her out of her regular care. Yet, her, as a woman that has been in the medical field for her career, she knew something was wrong. And we found out that she had cancer and stage 3. And
Mhm.
then now it has turned into stage 4. Um, and so I knew that stepping away from my classroom was the right thing because if I was still teaching, I would not have had the ability to stay with her in the hospital after her hours of surgery that they did to remove the cancer. Being with her, in the hospital during that time. I mean, my poor mama, she's my best friend. And even through everything that I've gone through, she was the one that saved me. I mean, she's the one that chose me to have me. And even that is a bit of our grief story, her and I. Um, because my mom wasn't expecting to have kids.
Mhm.
I was a product of um sorry if it's a trigger wording, but just unconsensual. Um and
You can say the word on this podcast
okay,
because we
thank you.
talk about
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. My mom was raped and in Mexico in the 90s, and for her to have the choice I was talking with a friend actually, and I said, I think I was born with some of that grief internally, the grief of innocence
Ooh, full
and the
body
sacred
chills. Yeah.
and the sacred rage for my mother.
Yes.
Um, and that's why this is this journey of me watching her and me getting to reparent myself through this time with her, as we know that, death is a part of this. I mean, death is here for all of us. And, we shy away from it so often. And yet I've known, that it's possible, right? And one of my biggest fears is to not have her here. So when we learned about the cancer diagnosis, it shook me. Yet I knew that what I had chosen to do before that was meant to be. There's no coincidence, right?
Right.
Excuse me. And so to be able, and even her and I joked about it. She's like, well, you, you stepped away from the classroom. Like, if you hadn't, you wouldn't have been able to be here. And I mean, I would have quit regardless. Yet I knew that by me doing that, it created that safety for her and I, because my mom is a
Your body was
strong,
already guiding you.
yes,
So we're so
yes,
connected to these shifts and changes. And it was like, okay, this is time.
yeah.
Your mom.
And yeah, my mom, and she has her beliefs, and I am so grateful that even within the religious space and the beliefs and all of those things, my mother is the example of how to live in that way authentically as a Christian. I mean, just how she is and how she lives her life has given me the example that regardless of the God you may be taught about or that, you grew up learning about. It's how you're living. And it's your personal relationship with yourself, whether you believe that it's someone in the sky or if it's you here in this body. We are created in the likeness, right? Depending on what you're taught. And that's what I was taught. We were taught that I am made in God's likeness, yet I'm treating others as though they themselves are not. And that for me showed me, oh, my mom shows up in this way with her work, with how she is as an individual, her whole life, going against the grain. And I kind of chuckle because I'm like, oh, I did that too, just in a completely different part of the spectrum.
Right.
Yet it has brought her and I so much closer together. And even the most difficult times in my life, she has been the one that has been there. And not to say that friends were not, yet she is the one that unconditionally has accepted me for me, flaws and all, rebellious spirit and all, and so for us to now be on this journey together, I mean, I hear stage 4 cancer and it's like, how dare it? How
Yeah.
dare you, Cancer, be taking my rock and my lighthouse from me? How dare you? What the heck? Right, like there is anger there alongside the grief. And even 6 months after we learned of my mom's diagnosis, my dear friend, my mom and I, our dear friend, she had asked me, can you be with me when it's time for me to go to die?
I
And
didn't realize it was your mom's friend too.
they were coworkers.
Mm.
That's how they met. And her name's Donna, and I love her dearly. She's actually the one of the parents of my dog because I inherited my dog from her and her husband, who also passed this last year and within 6 months. And so, with my mom going through her cancer journey, and so grateful that she's still here, because it's no joke that the treatments and stuff, it is very, gosh, it's just strenuous, and it's my mom's going through it and I'm just witnessing it, this powerful woman, this strong, like confident, outspoken, very solid woman, my mama, and then for our dear friend, her and Donna would talk often about death. And so that brought it up for me too. And so it really has, again, burst my heart open, and experiencing helping my friend transition. First of all, what an honor. Let
Hmm.
me be honest. Let me be frank. Like, she is a medicine woman in herself, a shaman in herself here in Alaska. She's indigenous. And so for her to ask me to be her guide, to be her death doula alongside her husband, that brought to the forefront for me, oh, I'm looking death literally in the face as I'm helping her, as we're, talking. And even in her last moments of consciousness, I actually got to record that. What a cool, crazy spiritual experience to be with someone as they're one foot in this life and one foot in the other. And just to not be afraid. I didn't feel fear. I felt so much love. Like, and I think people are afraid of the grief because they know it is going to not feel good. It sucks, and the tears and the crying and just the emotional release that comes with that, and that comes with grieving the presence that's no longer here on the physical plane. Yet for me, I knew, and I do know, that Donna is here. Mike, her husband, is here, you know, uh, and to know that, and I've told my mother this, she will be in everything I do. And just to have that reassurance doesn't make it easier. Don't let me sugarcoat it. It doesn't make it any easier. Yet I know that I am that continuing story of hers and mine. And for her to witness me be the teacher that I am, to be like almost like a grandma, to my students, and for her to witness me in that space has healed myself and her too, as my mother, to see me parenting in a way in my classroom. And so, with the passing of our two friends, and then my mom and I having the tough conversations, I'm the only one. I don't
Right.
have siblings. I don't have a dad. Well, I don't have a dad here. Wherever that person may be, wish them well. And even that for me has brought healing, because I decided that during my mom's journey, I decided it was time for me to find out about that other half. Not that I'm seeking that out, but it's my roots, because I know my mom and I's roots on her side. And she knows that this part of the journey is for me, and not to ever bring any of that past event up for her. And I think for a long time as a kid and as a young adult, like, I just didn't want to hurt my mom. I didn't want her to grieve that innocence that was taken.
Hmm.
And so for her and I to talk about these things, and even my most shameful times that I went through, she knows. And I'm so glad. There's nothing left unsaid, even the tough stuff. And what a blessing, because for all my 20s, it's like I ran away. Yet she was still here with open arms, willing and ready for me. And she knew she couldn't force me, the stubborn ladies that we are. Um, Yet I am so grateful to have this time now, as everything's still going on. It has really brought a sense of peace for me, that when that time does come and when she does die, I will be there, and I can just walk alongside her in this. So it's been a lot, and it's again a huge reason why I knew that the shift was so important, and to be witnessed by my mother again is such a blessing, because for a long time I didn't know if she'd ever understand me or we'd understand each other. Yet that internal battle of, I've had this example of my mother my whole life, yet I'm fighting against this other part of me that I've never known. And I'm so the chaos of that, I'm so
Yeah.
glad that her and I have this bond together that I can carry with me for the rest of my life. And I'm proud to say so.
And would you say that wasn't really coming to the forefront until her cancer diagnosis? Until that grief like brought it all around?
I will say that at the end of that yucky relationship, when we both had to go get a protective order from this person, I think that is what it really when it really started. Like
Mhm.
the grief of that version of me and the grief of her witnessing me being hurt, being, it and things like that in so many ways. I think that really started it. It kind of was that push. And then the choices that I was making after that uh really is now I'm like, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that, yes, even in the most trying and a really painful time in my life back then, being able to now see why, what it was for, what all of it was for, because that's actually how I met our friend Donna. Getting away from that relationship, she had gone through something very similar. And for her and I to connect. And then I would help, around the house and with her and her husband and things like that, and with their dogs and all of that. And then, for everything to then come to that, like me being with Donna at the end. And actually, crazy enough, during that time when she passed, I actually had just gotten broken up with. And then she passed an hour later. Talk about full body grief, and I mean, the relationship part, okay, it was for the best and it's all cool. But to feel that physical ache in my gut, I have never. And I knew because I had always numbed myself, or like distracted myself.
Mm-hmm.
So to feel that, not to say it will prepare me for when it is my mom's time, yet I know that that is my body like signaling to me, like there's something going on, and to just feel that literally like gut wrenching pain for those moments and to sit with it. And I was actually in my mom's house, in our house, laying in her bed when this all happened. Um, and it was such a crazy
Of when you
spiritual
felt
experience.
Donna fully crossing over.
Yeah. Yeah, it was insane. Like, and to be with Donna when again, like she was asking me if I was seeing certain things, and I'm like, nope. And she, I will never forget this, and I will laugh. Um, she was like, shit, I'm hallucinating, aren't I? I was like, yep. But just to have the comedic, like,
Mhm.
yeah, girl, no, but just to also see the other side, like, and I believe that she was seeing her relatives, she was seeing her mom who had passed, she was seeing other family members, she was seeing her husband's mother who had passed not shortly before that, like talking to them, and to be there and witnessing that, and I'm like, this is so beautiful. Death does not have to be scary. It does not have to be something that we have to try so hard to run away from because we are not able to.
You can't.
And
You
to
can't.
and no. And I mean, hey, it's all a part of our story. And when and whatever way it comes, it will. And so that motivation for me, and I learned so much and I healed so much. Donna was actually one of the best counselors slash substance abuse coaches in the state. They still use her programs. What a blessing for me to just be friends and like an adopted niece to her, who is a wonderful practitioner, to have then helped me and to teach me. And I inherited so much wisdom and knowledge from her, as well as from my mom, as well as from Donna's husband, Mike. Like, what a blessing, and to see where I was when I first met them to where I am now that they're both gone, you know, I still feel their presence. I mean, my dog, Ollie, went through both. This dog has grieved the loss of his tribe,
Yeah.
his pack. And
Mm.
now it's me and him processing the grief
Yeah.
together. So, I mean, in a cool yet really weird, funky way, like they made sure I made good on my promise to take care of him, kind of like I was given to my mom, even if it wasn't in the most, loving way. I was meant to be here to be that love, to share that, and to be that for my friends, for my loved ones, for those that are going through the loss of parents. One of my best friends, I was there with her when we learned of her mother's passing and went with her to see her before they, with the body. And I think it's scary for people to witness a loved one and their soul is no longer in this vessel. I
Mhm.
think that's a huge part of why we shy away from it, and people getting sick and the sick and dying. I was raised around that because of what my mom did for her work as a dietitian in a dialysis clinic. People in all sorts of parts of their life, and it didn't scare me. So I now see the cycle of what I went through growing up to now where I am now. It taught me to not shy away from the tough stuff. I'm kind of that person that's like, oh, you need help and how can I do that? Yet I had to understand that my presence and my energy, that is important. And how can I give if I'm not first giving to myself? So being able to now step into that and to really enjoy it, yet at the same time walking alongside the uncomfortability of grief and just sadness, and it's so easy to hold on to it and or mask it or, numb it. I mean, again, did it for too long. And it is a practice to, man, to really talk and walk alongside people that are going through that in this moment, whether it was an unexpected passing or whether it's kind of like my mom's, like it's a longer process. And sometimes I feel like that's worse, like I'm
Yeah.
witnessing the decline, the health decline of my person, you know, the woman that I call every day. Um, and again, to be able to repair that relationship, I thought it would be too late, but it wasn't.
And there's still
Universe, the
time.
universe knew. The universe knew I needed this.
That goes beautifully into the next question of the concept of time. Um, that with grief, like grief and time seem to kind of always go hand in hand of like there's not enough time or I wish I had more time. So what are your insights on that with grief, time, and how life, things, and people used to be?
I mean, with time, there is healing. It's kind of there's no other way I can put that. And being with the grief, it doesn't go away. It will linger, yet at the same time, with time, it can turn into something beautiful. It can turn into compassion. It can turn into love. I mean, it is that. Grief is showing you that capacity. Like, how can I hold this two things at the same time? And to know that it is okay to have the grief and it causes us to pause. It really does. It really, for me, it caused me to see what I'm spending my time doing. What am I, yeah, what am I spending my time doing? This is how I used to spend my time, yet it just brought me down, in so many ways. What am I doing with the time that I have with my loved ones, with myself? What am I doing with that time? What am I creating? And as much as for me, it's like, well, we just have to get it done and we have to do this all at one time and I have to rush and do everything. Talk about, ADHD, like, whether it's society imposed or just, you
Trauma
know,
induced.
yes, exactly, like the panic.
Hmm.
And I think the panic is what caused me to choose that instant gratification or the instant, feel better. Yet it was still there.
Right.
And it would come out in other ways, And so to understand that better now for me, I see how precious this time is now. Like in the present, one day at a time, that has brought me to a better understanding of how to continue living.
That together, like you said, like being in the present with time, because the concept or the phrase of time heals, that by itself won't mean shit if you're not present or if you're running around and you're avoiding, you're distracting, you're escaping, you're numbing. Time will not heal in that way. Like you said, it will still be here, but time heals as in when you're in the present with the time that you have now, especially if you have the privilege to be with someone as they're dying versus someone that doesn't when it's just sudden. So it's like
Yeah.
you get at least a little bit of some concept of time of near an end here instead of when it's like a sudden death. So it's like that's where that time heals, but when you're present with the time.
Yeah, and actually, something really cool that happened during the time with Donna and her husband, Mike and our friendship grew during that. I was closer to Donna, but also knew him and everything, and he taught me a lot of cool things. We actually sat back to back on the floor in the living room. Donna's in the other room. It was a couple days before she passed, and just for him and I to sit with each other, not speaking, but just sitting back to back. And I think he said that people in war would do that. They would sit back to back, as a way to regulate, as a way to just be next to somebody. And for me, that spoke volumes because of my family's part in the military. My grandpa was. And to even just heal that part of myself that I didn't maybe realize I needed during that time. Just having that simple interaction of sitting back to back as we were both sitting in the grief, of the passing of his best friend, his wife, his one and only. And then for me, of being there and being present while it was all happening, and what a cool and I will never forget that. I will never forget that. And I was actually doing it was a 3-day somatic activated healing workshop. Like we were doing it for 3 days in the morning.
Mhm.
And I did those while I was with them both. And like just doing the movement practice, doing the breath work. Mike would just sit next to me in his recliner, but I'm doing the movements, I'm doing the dance, I'm
Yeah.
doing that work. He's watching me do that in the home where they are as Donna's dying, and I'm like, this is how I'm processing this so that I don't lose my shit,
Hmm.
yet at the same
But you're
time,
sharing the burden because he's witnessing you.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And what a beautiful, again, our relationship strengthened through that, and it was really hard. It was really hard for him. And he did pass not many months after. And so to know that in that moment, in that time we spent together, I grew, he grew, and we talked a lot after. And, I think too, again, the time that I have, I still go and my mom and I do Zumba. That woman is going to dance until she's not able to, because darn neuropathy. One of the things about cancer, and I'm learning that, yet I see how she continues to show up, whether it's for me, or herself. Like it has not deterred her in that way. And what a sense of strength to know that I have that in me from my mom. It continues to push me forward to kind of skirt the line, but push the envelope and say, okay, I can use this spirited, rebellious part of myself to now share this practice that's going to be showing in a way that hope is possible. Like loving yourself through the tough times, loving others around you during those tough times. It is possible. And yes, the emotions are there, the emotions are prevalent, yet at the same time, what a cool experience as a human being during this time of our lives on earth to have this way of you and I even communicating and sharing from opposite sides of the world
Yeah,
almost.
yeah, pretty much.
you, you know, and continuing to show up in this way and do this work. I mean, if the saw method really helped me through that time and continues to,
It expands your
so
capacity to hold it. Like somatic work in general,
yes.
like that. Somatic work as a way to be with all feelings and reconnect to the body, not somatic work to like, oh, how can I get over this feeling so quickly because it arised and I don't want to feel it anymore. Nope, that's not what we do. But the somatic work to be here now, to feel all there is right now, that's how we're able to keep continuing and being with everything that you're sharing right now. Like that increased your capacity to actually be present, to actually, yeah, be there instead of run away from discomfort and from death because it's happening regardless of your presence or not.
Yeah. And crazy that, we just said, oh, I'm a different person than I was 7 years ago. Yet I know that at the end of my story, when that time comes to have experienced that, to understand that I've gone through this literal, on a cellular level,
Hmm.
huge change, and to see where I am now. Like, and the somatic work, you are so right. The somatics of it, the dancing, the screaming,
Yeah.
the rage that I've held in my body for so long, I can let it out through movement. And it doesn't have to be sexy. It doesn't have to be like regulated or anything. Like I am allowed to move my body because I am human.
I'm
Like that.
whipping my head around like imagine
Yeah.
I'm like now that
Yes.
my like I've grown my hair out again
That's
and
great.
it's like now I'm really whipping my hair around and then my neck is often so sore. But what you shared earlier, it's like there was so much work to be done with the neck and the throat and as a woman and speaking up and just previous abuse and swallowing ourselves in that way to say stay safe, but now I am safe, so I can break up anything that's was stagnant or left behind within this neck and throat space. And so I know
Yes.
that's what that's connected to, and I am just like slanging like my hair all around. And then I'm so sore, but it's like, okay, yeah, we did some shit.
Yeah, and moving it around, like, and I know especially as, we hold so much in our hips, we hold,
Hmm.
so much there, even just from generations of our family. And, I've done a lot of work around that, and I continue to, because in this work, I am now okay with learning about that other side of me, the paternal side of me.
Hmm.
And before I didn't feel comfortable and I suppressed that part and was just like, people are going to put you in a box wherever, like, where are you from? Like, where are you really from? Things like that. Guys, I don't have an answer. Good luck, you know, but that grief of identity, of
Yeah.
not knowing what my identity that people wanted, but I found that for myself. And even during this time, like as with my mom, I mean, that was a part of it, and like I was sharing earlier, like I think me tapping into my roots and taking a trip, going down to Mexico, stepping foot there to heal that part of me, also my mom too, and I think
Yeah.
that's going to be part of my journey,
Even just stepping
just
on that land, like you
yes.
won't even just stepping on the land is going
Yes.
to bring up so much somatically. Yeah, like you won't even have
Yes.
to quote unquote try after that
Yeah.
of like just being on the land.
And crazy too because, as my mom she never sugarcoated it. She wasn't ever like, oh, well, this just, no, she gave me the hard facts. I mean, not details, but because she, from what she remembered. And
Hmm.
I was like, as a kid, at a young age, I knew that. And I
Yeah.
think a part of me grieved that, again, that innocence that was taken from her and I as I came into existence. And
Yeah, you were
to
already
know,
born with that being
mhm.
obstructed.
And oh my gosh, I am such an advocate for that because things that happen in utero, that's the creation of life,
Yeah.
as you're becoming you. And then to have carried it for so long, like that is in my DNA, yet I now understand more my purpose of being here. And like just even that part of my story, a lot of people don't know that. They might know me as like, you know, Alexa who was, I was dating this person, or, I went to school here, or I did this for sports, blah, blah, blah. That is not who I am at my core,
Yeah.
And so to have that conversation with my mother, hey, mom, this is what it says. This isn't to hurt you. This is just for me. And I'm so glad that it went better than I thought. I was a little afraid, because you're not trying to bring up somebody's trauma. But when I, in a kind of messed up way, am the embodiment of that trauma
Hmm.
to her, I held on to that for a long time, as a kid, like that shame, it's like, oh, I hurt my mom when it wasn't in fact me.
Correct.
And yeah, and to let go of that. I mean, that was a huge grief thing for me too, of, well, my existence, it hurt my mom, like, so I'm worthy of being punished. And I think a lot of that pushed me into just certain situations because I felt like I was worthy of being punished because of who I came from,
Yeah.
and
How you're
to have those
creating.
conversations with her uh, has, I think, really helped both of us just have a better understanding of each other. Yet she also is seeing how my part of my story is going to be to do that. And what a blessing that. And not ironically, she gave me some snakes that were created that time. She was in Mexico City and went to Oaxaca the day after that event. And during New Year's, of all things, and I'm like, Mom, there's no coincidences of this. She was stuck down there because a volcano went off at the end of 89. I think it's the volcano in Washington or something. And she was stuck down there. And I'm like, so if you hadn't gotten stuck,
The
if
volcano in
you,
Washington, like Mount St. Helens,
yes, yep.
that was, yeah, that was early 80s.
Yeah, yep. And
Wow.
so in 89, there was one. Now, was it Redoubt? Was it up here? It might have been up
Yeah, it
here in
was a
Alaska.
little, it wasn't as big as Mount St. Helens. Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yes. So, yeah. So Mount Redoubt exploded up here in Alaska. And my mom was going on a medical mission trip, of all things,
Mm,
being a part of the church and everything. And I'm like, there are no coincidences.
no.
Yet to know her, who she is, and she is such a strong person. And the fact that she went and she found out she was going to have me after she got back to Alaska, like, and her having met this couple down there and they went and traveled after that whole thing and she came back, she had these snakes that she gave me from there, from Oaxaca. And I'm like, that just connected me
Do
so much
you
more,
still
Mom. And
have
we've had them
those?
my whole life. We've had them my whole life. Like they've been in
Oh
my
my
house.
God.
And she was like, here, like these are for you. And people are usually afraid of snakes and da da da. But I'm like, just her handing me these beautifully painted snakes that are from Mexico. That was during a time when my mom had that, she went through that experience. And I'm like, this is connecting me so much more to that. So I can let go of that grief. I can connect rather than run away. And I
Hmm.
think for so long I ran away from the grief. Now I'm walking towards it.
Yeah.
I'm walking alongside it.
And I
And
want
so
to,
that for me is huge.
yeah. And I want to bring that to the front of like, as you talked about with your mom of that unconditional love and her being the embodiment of that. So, just for the listeners in general, like understanding the full context of what that means. This isn't just like, oh, I'm your mom and I always love you. Like, yes, that's real and that's here. This is like from this, like the conception of rape, and then choosing to love unconditionally, this process. That's the paradox. That's both sides of the spectrum there to dig deep and retrieve that unconditional love after something like that and to hold that to raise you within it because there's differences of like if someone doesn't have the capacity to feel it at that time, like it affects then how the child is raised. And there's like so you can tell like that was part of that journey of like, hey, this is here. This is not this was chosen. This is in my field. And now I'm going to choose my daughter. Like she chose
Yeah.
me. So,
Kicking and screaming, girl. Yeah.
mm,
Yes. And thank you for speaking to that, and growing up in the church, with my mom and her beliefs, seeing
yeah.
seeing how people treated us because I was not conceived. I was conceived out of wedlock. But
Mm,
how are you going to treat my mother? By understanding what happened to her. Are you going to embrace us or are you going to turn us away?
hmm
And then her being a single mom, she chose to not be partnered. And I love that for her. I mean, I I love it for her. I understand it more now that I am at the age that she had me. I mean, just to even think of that full circle as
Yes.
she had me at this age while now she is passing as I am this age. Like,
hmm
what a trip, and at the same time, oh, I became a parent. I became a caregiver to my dog, Ollie. It's not a physical child for me, yet he acts like one, but seeing the parallels for both her and I, and for it to come together like that, and again, like you said, me, my existence. And my uncle said this to me. He said, I told your mom that having you would burst her heart open. And I'm so glad. Um, the power of choice, yes. So grateful. So grateful. And to know, and I found a letter once that said, we're so glad that you decided to keep Alexa. I mean, my sweet mama going through that. I see now like so much perseverance, so much strength. And again, so grateful to now she has passed that on to me as her strength is dwindling, you know, I am becoming more strong. I am standing in my power and not backing down as she showed me as an example growing up. So I think just a cool, crazy,
hmm
part of life. Again, beautifully painful. I say that with
Yeah.
reverence. Beautifully painful because I cry all the time. Yet I know that it's healthy to express that. And even when I feel like I'm the emotional one, when she's the one going through this physically, emotionally, and mentally, it's like I'm so glad she can see me because she knows that I love her dearly. Our loved ones know that we love them, and the tears are not always sad, but they are a part of us releasing what we're holding on to. And I know I mean, my goodness, I cry all the time.
It's the flow of the energy.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that's it, and that's the somatics helps that flow. We're
Yeah.
just the vessel of things coming and going, and we're not, like you said, we're not meant to hold on to it, and we there's to a point where we can't, then the body will reject and rebel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And those physical symptoms, I mean, again, our body communicates with us all the time. And just the the tension and things that I can feel moving or from past things, that come up now that the somatic work is a part of my life. And
Mm.
I love it even when it's uncomfortable or I feel like I can't really, tap in, it happens. It just takes time. And to be patient, like you said, not just, okay, I'm just going to do the movements, I'm just going to do the breath work and the mantras, and then I'm done. That's not solving anything. It's not, it's just a little band-aid. Yet, having it consistently, showing up for classes as I've seen you teaching online. I mean, it's inspired me to show up weekly to share things like that. I mean, it is something that is truly life changing. And I'm so grateful for for Sahara, for you, for others in our cohort that continue to do this. And I'm in Alaska, you're in Florida. Like, there are no bounds to this. It
Right.
is not just for a certain demographic of people. And I love that I was able to show my students that at 5 years old, we did the breath work. We would do, we would do the movements, we would do the mantra, and, shifting it to what was good for them as
Mhm.
kiddos, you know, yet to see that shift, it's like, everyone is worthy and deserving of having that awareness.
And that
How do we
it gets to
continue to show
happen.
up? Hmm.
Trusting the
Yeah.
process and letting go of expectations because the shift could be so minuscule. And but if we have attached an expectation of, well, my life must shift this way for it to be quote unquote working, right? It's like, no, everything's temporary, so a shift will come, but let go of how that actually looks and what that means and how that feels in your body. I want you to continue to talk more about your mom and the cancer diagnosis and walking together in that grief, but then specifically the paradox for you in this phase with your mom.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing of cancer, first of all, it's touched so many in our lives. And to really, again, I was not used to seeing my mom hurting or in pain, whereas my grandmother was. My grandmother was sick a lot, and I don't think it desensitized my mom, yet because of her medical background. And my grandmother was the reason my mom went into dietetics, like helping people nutritionally, helping them with their lifestyle like that.
And didn't you
And
say she probably that like your mom wouldn't have picked up on the feelings and the diagnoses if it wasn't for her profession?
yeah, yeah, I do think, and again, not ironic, her type of cancer is peritoneal cancer. So the belly lining also, can start from fallopian tubes and things like that. And she did peritoneal dialysis teaching at her dialysis clinic.
Yeah.
Talk about
Ain't that some
irony.
shit?
Ain't that some shit? As well as Donna had kidney failure and worked at the dialysis clinic with my mom. Ain't that
That's
some
some
shit?
shit. Damn. That's another
You
one.
know, yes. So I think truly for both of them, and as women that are very in tune with themselves, they knew. And just to witness that, my mom advocated, literally went to the hospital saying something is not right, I need to get some scans. And she didn't even have a primary care person because she got kicked off because of all the wonderful things happening in the healthcare system. So she already had the diagnoses before she even met this primary care person, and then her journey started. I mean, again, just to advocate for herself, which is so, it was beautiful to witness because it was just like something's going on. Her belly was starting to grow. She was getting ascites. Like, I mean, she looked pregnant. I mean, they had to drain a gallon of fluid from my mom, like just
Wow.
fluid. And I'm like, it's like you're pregnant again, mom. And we laughed about it. We laughed about it because it was
My
like,
brain literally went to that of like, oh wow, look at her advocating for herself now.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And again, crazy. Not, I mean, just so to witness that and then to be with her again, like the whole cancer. I lived with her for the first 6 months of her journey, and grateful that I was able to, being there with her, caregiving, like her and I have always done that for one another. and even deeper than like a mother-daughter connection, which maybe and I will be honest, for a long time there was a disconnect there, like the mother-daughter connection, because it was more like she's a teacher to me rather than a parent. If and it and I still go through that because I was like, there was just such a disconnect growing up. But
Mm,
again, that's a different part of the story, and it
yeah.
kind of caused us to really have this rough relationship for many years. I pushed back a lot. I questioned a lot, and to now show her and even tell her about reparenting myself, why I do certain things the way that I do them now, how I took things from growing up to now implementing them as an adult and showing up in this way. Very cool, to bring it together and to show her and have her witness me standing in that power. And it's like, I got this sass from somewhere, mom. Like apple not far from tree, and yet to make it my own. And for her, as she's going through the cancer diagnosis, I mean, you talk about someone that she just takes it head on. I mean, and shows up for her appointments. She will pauses infusions when needed, like her again, listening so intuitively to her body. It's awesome to see. And because, it's so easy, and especially within the older community. I mean, my mom is going to have her birthday next week. She'll be 68 years old. And, you know, we didn't know if she would make it to 68, honestly. And just to be able to be here with her for a whole nother year. And it'll be 2 years in July that we first found out. And they gave us an amount of time, a projected. And so I'm like, oh shit, okay. Like,
Right,
I mean, you talk about not wanting to procrastinate, and the difference between procrastination and rest is
right.
something that I am the balance, right? Where am I balancing that at? Where in my life? Uh, so it's really taught me, and even things like this, you know, that I've not really done. It's like I want to record our our stories, my mom and I's story, because I think even now and in the years to come, it will be a story of hope and
Yes.
of love, through all of it, through all the crazy, through all the, of
And with
life's
that, you just
ups and
start.
downs. Yeah.
You could
Yeah. And
start
so,
on her birthday.
right. And so I'm like, I have a webcam, and I have, I just like, and even during the holidays now, I've been recording us. I've been recording her cooking. I've been recording her and I just talking about things and stories, because one day I will not have her voice physically here, but I want to have that for me, for when I'm going through life without her. And as sad as that makes me, it makes me so grateful again that even through this cancer journey, our relationship has continued to grow and to just be, and it has impacted me so much because every person that I come in contact with, like, I really do feel as though the message of love is there. Even in anger sometimes, like the
Hmm.
presence of it is there, even in the uncomfortable. And so it, man, it's scary as shit. I won't lie. I'm not looking forward to it. Yet I now have tools that before I probably would have gone, to a bar, or, gone and partied, or, something,
Hmm.
where now I know that I can hold myself in that grief and
You can be in the
not,
body.
yes, yeah, and not just numb myself again, like not numbing myself and those pesky old habits that try to show up every now and then, like, oh, it would be okay. No,
Right.
like I want more for myself. And because I
Exactly.
know that she would want more for me also. And again, for her to have seen me at my lowest, like the lowest of the low, like under the dirt, for her to see what has changed and how I've grown and stepping into my power and purpose. Like, I couldn't ask for a bigger blessing. I mean, my gosh, I couldn't ask for, a bigger gift
Mhm.
to have with me and to know that regardless of if anybody else knows that, I know that and I am here for it.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, we've definitely been talking for over an hour, maybe close to an hour and a half. There's a few questions left, so we're probably not going to get to all of them. Um, But with that and the grief being the gift, I feel like this could tie into like a good like last question of talking about like alchemizing grief then. And that's something that you speak of and want other people to understand or know that that's
Yeah.
possible and that this is here and that that the medicine exists within it. So within that realm, like what do you have to share with that?
Ooh. So alchemizing the grief, alchemization, turning one thing into another. And it's messy. I won't lie to you. It can be messy. And for me, dance has been a way that I've communicated, whether it was, unfortunately for a long time in my 20s, it was under the influence. I only felt safe enough to move and do that if I had a drink or two or whatever.
Right.
That's what
And
I was
isn't that
taught.
another layer of liberation when you can get to
Yes.
that point and dance without substances?
Yes. Yeah. And it is a journey. It is a journey to find that balance and like what's no longer serving and what is. What's keeping me in that grief state and what is helping me come to a better understanding of it. Because I wouldn't say come out of it because it will be there, you
Right.
know? And so to know in that moment when the grief is coming, okay, either I'm going to pause. I think that's a huge part of it. I'm just going to pause. It doesn't mean I have to take hours out of my day, yet sometimes it might.
Correct.
Sometimes you might need that. Hey, what works for you? Yet for me, having a better understanding that the grief that I've held onto for my whole life, now I am able to turn that into love, to be honest, because I know that's why I'm here. I know that's what I'm here on this earth for, you know, no matter how many lives I may impact, that right there, to know that I can teach others how to, yes, sit with it for the moment, and then where will we go from there? To know that in my body, I can explain it. How can I better explain that to other people? And so the movements, the somatics, literally alchemizing that, changing that yucky, uncomfortable feeling in my body to a deep breath and to be able to release that. Like putting it in so many words, like really
Being with it and
tapping in.
releasing it. It depends
Yes.
too on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, not running away, not running away from it, walking towards it to have a better understanding. Like that for me is how I'm alchemizing it for myself. Where is the grief coming from? What am I grieving? Is it, the past? Is it, what I've had to let go? Who I've had to let go? Past versions of myself I've had to let go to be able to step into this next chapter. And I had to grieve that. I had to grieve being a teacher and I am not a perfect individual by any means. I will not ever proclaim to be so. Yet in the teacher world, we're supposed to be this perfect little, just like this,
Yeah.
perfect little picture that is of a beautiful person that never does anything wrong. So unrealistic. And yet, I was able to show my students real emotion. I was able to express to them safely and in a healthy way frustration. or,
Mm-hmm.
like, but really being able to have that. They knew for me, with me, well, we are going to talk about, what's going on, yet I am not going to break you down how I was when I was young,
Mm-hmm.
like this way or no way. No, let's actually talk about it. The emotion you're feeling, the big feeling. Did you use an I message? I feel blank when blank. Fill it in, positive or negative. Just having that in my classroom. And funny that that's how the kids know me. I'm like, did you go use an I message? Oh, no. Okay, go do that. Just that part, to give them that voice, and anyone that I'm around, to give yourself that chance and that ability to use your voice to express what you're feeling in that moment with the person, or whether you're in counseling or whether you're right there with the person that you're going through it with, things like that. The support, you don't have to do it alone. And I think for so long I felt like nobody would understand it. No one gets this pain. I'm just going to continue to do what I'm doing. Like nobody cares. Not true. Limiting belief that I had about myself. Oh, I deserve this punishment, or how this person's treating me badly. Not true.
Mm-hmm.
So to then communicate that, to teach how to, just that simple phrase, the I message, I feel like that changed my life, not just for myself, but for those that I was teaching, and, the kiddos. And cool to see the younger generation have that tool as they've grown up and as they have. And I even will advocate for this. I had a student pass away my first year of teaching. Talk about grief while teaching all these beautiful students and having lost one and
A
walking
5-year-old.
alongside. Yes. And I actually have a picture of him. I had a picture of him in my classroom every year. I have a little memorial for him, of a picture he gave me before he passed. Like, that in itself was a spiritual experience. So I've had this, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, on my journey, just these moments where the grief of others or the passing of someone, I'm alchemizing that, changing it, and then projecting love from that, because it made me a better teacher. Even going through that, because I didn't know. Kids go through so much that we don't know about, especially if you are in, a more impoverished community. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the struggles are real. So having my students lose a friend, having me as a teacher who I'm responsible for these kiddos, while they're with me, yet to have experienced that loss my first year as a teacher, oh, you better believe that I was a mama bear for these babies. And you're not going to treat my babies any certain type of way, and they will stand up for themselves. And I'm going to advocate for that. So, as for me, I mean, I guess you could say that's kind of where it started too. This grief work, especially with kids, because the kids, I don't think, went to counseling. Like my students, I mean, they had a counselor come in and things like that. Yet to witness the best friend of this student, of my kiddo, she struggled for years. And
Mm-hmm.
her and I still have a beautiful friendship. She's in junior high now. Oh my gosh. And it's like, to witness her and to be a safe place for her, that is when I knew, okay, that's a part of my purpose, is
Mm.
to teach people there is a safe place here for you and your emotions. I'm not going to shame you for them. I just want us to find ways that are not harmful to
Yeah.
you, to others, things like that. So, huge part of the alchemizing. And I'm
I was
so
gonna
glad that
say
I could
that's the
bring that.
alchemizing too, of like how can we feel it and express it without being harmful? Like that's part of the
Yes.
alchemizing. 'Cause
Facts.
we don't want to suppress it. That's not the goal, like, that's no,
Yeah.
or to
Yeah.
pretend that things are okay. That doesn't, no, that's not part of that. But it's
Yeah, and even the family. I mean, my goodness, people demonized this family for so long. And it was like, do you realize that they just lost their child?
right.
Do you realize that regardless of how it happened, they would never want that to happen. So for me to stand there and say, no, you will not treat this family badly. You will not treat them as though it was their fault. no, thank you. Like, I will not stand for that injustice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, never ever. And also too why I'm an advocate for teaching kids about gun safety,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't even pretend like so for on my journey as a teacher, like that's how we started. It's how I started
Yeah.
and to have a moment like that and I actually went through that recently. Another former student of mine just passed a couple months ago and to be there with the family. I mean, I'm thanking the family for allowing me to be a part of their life.
Mm-hmm.
That is a blessing. I've learned so much from these kiddos while they've been with me. So what a blessing that even during their pain and their grief, they felt called to let me know to we created that friendship, together during that year of him being in my class. Like it's everywhere. We don't know when it's going to happen. So let's continue to move forward, showing up and loving, and even on the days when it's hard. So that is, again, going to continue to do so. I mean, hey, this is
Yeah.
just one more step towards where I am going to be. And I mean, I'm so excited, and again, alongside the grief, there is so much anticipation for where things are going, and will continue and to continue to share my voice and to continue to share my story. So thank you for this because it's just another step in that direction and I'm so grateful.
It is. Yeah. So share all your offerings then of how you are currently showing up or if you have anything in the
Yes.
works or what's going
Yeah,
on.
so I have my website, alexarising.com, and on there I teach a class on Sundays on Zoom for free, which has been amazing and just a great way to continue to show up sharing the SAW method. And then I am also doing my Dharma coaching, which can be signed up through my website also. So if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to me there. I have my Instagram where I share my morning walk mementos, just a time that I take when I'm walking my dog. And also, too, that has really been a process for me to share and to just show up in that space and giving people insight about where I am in my life. And so Instagram is a great way to connect with me. I love learning how to share all these videos now. So it's super fun and just sharing more about the somatic activated healing method as well as Dharma coaching. So just here and wanting to share the hope that is there for each of us.
And we'll put all that in the show notes. So you just have to like scroll down, look, click on the links, explore all
Yeah.
the things. And
Yes.
final question, what are some ways that you create light?
Oh, presence. Allowing my presence to speak for itself as I can show up as my true self. Being able to be a lighthouse for others. I don't have all of the answers, yet I'm happy to walk alongside and to support. And I think that for me, finding that balance in a way that is beneficial for me, in a way that is sharing, you know, listening, a lot more listening. And to be able to show up on the dance floor as when I'm teaching also, I think that has created such an inner light for me that people can see it. I mean, I've had to reintroduce myself to people because it's kind of like, again, that 7-year cycle. I
Mm-hmm.
am this different individual, yet still me, and to share that and for them to listen and then to connect where I'm at now to where I was, creating that kind of light on the journey is worth it. The
Mm-hmm.
hard work, it is worth it, even in
It
those
is.
moments when it can be difficult. So to share that and be that light, and to continue to show up as a teacher, just in a different capacity, it's super fun for me. And I'm still learning. So we'll see what the future holds. And that is just a way for me to know that I am where I'm meant to be. And so just
Mhm.
sharing that light with others, and like I said, sharing that hope has been such a privilege of mine. And, I just hope that it will continue and that the doors will continue to be open for me, for you, those of us that are on this journey.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here and just this raw, honest conversation. 'Cause people need
You're
it.
so
Like you
welcome.
said, like grief is not talked about in this way enough. So shedding light on that. But thank you all for being here. And remember, when we see the light in ourselves, we create light in others.